Okay, I want you to picture this. It's the early 1970s. You've got this young, really determined lawyer, Ralph Nader, and he's in a boardroom filled with some of the most powerful auto executives in the world. Now, he didn't come with a big speech or a bunch of demands. Nope. He brought something way simpler and a whole lot more powerful. He just starts with this one question. You can almost feel the air go out of the room, right? It's so simple, but the answer is, well, it's really awkward for them. He's not pointing a finger or accusing them. He's just holding up a mirror to their own logic. And then, boom, he hits them with another one. Look at what he's doing here. He isn't arguing. He's not making some grand statement. He's using their own words, their own claims about safety, to force them to see the huge contradictions in what they say versus what they do. He was making them think. Now, this technique, this incredibly powerful way of using questions to find the truth, it's not new, not at all. In fact, it has a name, and that name is over 2,400 years old. It's called the Socratic Method, and the two most important words there are cooperative dialogue. This isn't about winning a fight or making someone look stupid. It's a tool that's actually designed to work with somebody to get to a deeper, more honest answer. The way it works is almost like a surgeon's scalpel. It so carefully peels back the layers of an argument to get to what's underneath. The hidden assumptions we all have, the little contradictions in our own logic. And from there, it pushes us toward a totally new way of seeing things. So who's the guy who gave his name to this powerful and, let's be real, often super annoying technique? Well, let's meet the original master of the uncomfortable question himself. From everything we know, Socrates was, well, he was kind of a pain. His whole mission was to walk around ancient Athens and just question anyone who acted like they were an expert. Politicians, famous poets, skilled craftsmen, nobody was safe. He'd ask something like, "So, what is justice?" And then he would just poke holes in every single answer they gave until they were left totally speechless or, more often than not, really, really angry. But here's the thing you have to understand. Socrates wasn't just trying to be a jerk. He truly believed that real wisdom wasn't about having all the answers. It was about realizing you have none. In fact, his most famous saying was that he knew only one thing, that he knew nothing. And by starting from that place of humility, he could start asking much, much better questions. So if this method is so great for finding the truth, why does it feel so threatening? Why does it make us so uncomfortable? Well, to understand why Socrates was eventually sentenced to death for asking too many questions, we have to look at something deep inside our own brains. Back in the 1950s, a psychologist named Leon Festinger finally gave it a name: cognitive dissonance. It's that cringy, stressful feeling you get in your head when you're trying to hold two contradictory ideas at once, or when a new fact comes along that just completely crashes against a belief you've held for a long, long time. This image just perfectly captures that feeling, doesn't it? It's like this mental tug of war. Our brains hate uncertainty. So when we feel that dissonance, our first instinct usually isn't to change our minds. It's to find a way to ignore the new information, to explain it away, just to make the uncomfortable feelings stop. And that right there is why the Socratic method feels so threatening. But it's also why it's so incredibly powerful. It doesn't let you look away. It intentionally creates that mental friction and forces you to sit there in that discomfort and actually examine the shaky foundations of what you thought you knew for sure. But that discomfort, it isn't just about tearing things down. When you harness it the right way, it is one of the single most powerful tools for growth ever invented. And it's still being used today in some of the most high-stakes fields you can possibly imagine. I mean, just think about a courtroom. The best lawyers don't just stand up and shout about what's true. No, they win their case by asking this precise, careful series of questions that leads a witness, and more importantly, the jury, to the exact conclusion they want. That's the Socratic method, live in action. You see the same thing in a science lab. The whole system of peer review is basically Socratic. It's a structure where really smart people are constantly challenging each other's work, questioning assumptions, looking for contradictions, all to make sure the final result is as close to the truth as possible. And it is an absolute powerhouse in the business world. The smartest companies know you can't just fix problems on the surface. You have to use structured questions to dig way, way deeper. And probably the most famous example of this comes from a company that built a whole technique around one simple number. At Amazon, they call it the 5 whys. Whenever something goes wrong, a team has to ask why 5 times in a row. The first answer is never good enough. It forces them to go past the obvious and find the actual root cause of the problem. It's literally Socrates, brought into the 21st century boardroom. And this really gets us back to the most important point of all. When this is done right, the goal is never to shame somebody or to prove them wrong just for the sake of it. The real goal is to work together to refine an idea, to find the weak spots so you can build something stronger in their place. So what it all boils down to is this. We have to start seeing these uncomfortable questions not as an attack, but as an act of courage. It's about being willing to embrace a little bit of constructive disruption, all for the sake of real growth. I think this image really says it all. We tend to think of knowledge as this big pile of answers, right? These solid, finished blocks. But real wisdom, true understanding, that's the tree. And the only way to get there is to walk the path that is paved step by step with questions. The philosopher Karl Popper put it perfectly. All knowledge starts with a question. That's the truth that Socrates built his entire life around. And even though it cost him everything, his method, his way of seeking the truth, has survived for thousands of years. Which, of course, leaves us with one last question. And it's probably the most important one. It's a question for all of us, in our jobs, in our relationships, and even in how we think about our own beliefs. The tool is right there. It's proven, it's powerful, and it's waiting. The only real question left is, do we have the courage to actually use it?